Hello, and welcome to the Badhumanist look at the Frost Mage. So in this video, I'm going to take a look at the Frost Mage here on the BfA beta, kind of give you an overview of what's going on currently with the spec. I'm going to talk a bit about the passives and the abilities, kind of walk through what abilities and passives the Frost Mage has on the beta here. I will then go through the talents. Again, I'll talk about things like synergy, usefulness, how fun are they, what do they look like, things like that, of course. And then I'll talk a bit about stats, stat synergy. I'm not going to be doing any kind of like this stat is the the exact specific ranking system or anything like that. I'll just talk about what my thoughts might be, and then wrap up with overall thoughts and again my thoughts and hopes for the future. So Frost is a very interesting spec. So again, I talked about in my last video on the Fire Mage, but how I disliked the fact that the Fire Mage was reliant upon the travel time of your spells for the crit. Well, Frost has the same interesting thing, but I actually enjoy the mechanic here, and I've actually found it a bit more fun. But before we dive into that, let's take a look here at our passives. I don't know why Iceland's back here. Anyway, so Shatter, again, multiplies the critical strike chance of your spells against frozen targets by 1.5, and adds an additional 50% critical strike chance. So Mastery Icicles here, so casting Frostbolt or Flurry grant you an Icicle. Casting Ice Lands causes all Icicles stored to begin launching the target. Up to 5 Icicles can be stored. Again, this is your passive, so again, the amount of damage they do as well as the damage increase to Frozen Orb both scale with how much stats you have. Fingers of Frost, so Frostbolt has a chance and Frozen Orb has a chance to grant you Fingers of Frost. Fingers of Frost causes your next Ice Lands to deal damage as if the target were frozen. And again, it should be noted that Ice Lands does triple damage against frozen targets, so that's very useful. Brain Freeze is the kind of the real core of this, which is that Frostbolt has a 30% chance to empower your next Flurry to be instant, deal 50% increased damage, and apply Winter's Chill. Now, Winter's Chill causes the target to take damage as if it were frozen. So, if you have a Brain Freezed Flurry, you basically get Winter's Chill, which allows you to any damage you do to the target while that's active to do damage like it's frozen. Remember, that's kind of the whole part. Like, Shatter's all about that. You have Time Warp again, this is your heroism. You have Teleport. Spellstill is still here as well. Slowfall is here. Ring of Frost is here, because this is a talent, but I'll show it off now. Right, there we go. Remove Curse is still here. Portals are here. Polymorph, again, still here as well. Invisibility, again, makes you go invisible. Icy Veins is your main cooldown. It's a 3-minute cooldown. It accelerates your spell casting for 20 seconds, pretty long time, granting 30% haste and preventing damage from delaying spell cast, so a nice kind of passive haste boost. Ice Lance, so again, this quickly fires a shard of ice at the target, dealing a bunch of frost damage to any nearby target as well as the damage being tripled against frozen target. So it has a natural kind of cleave here that you can kind of see. So again, if I do this, it does do damage to more than one target, as you can see down here in my combat log. Ice Flows, I'll talk about that later. Ice Block, still here. Ice Barrier is here as well. There we go. Glacial Spike's a talent, talk about that later. Frozen Orb, still here, 1-minute cooldown. Again, it is what it is. It goes pretty quickly now, but when it hits the target, it does kind of slow down a bit. It does grant you some nice Fingers of Frost, which is quite nice. It does pretty good damage as well. Frostbolt, Frost Nova. Again, Frostbolt is your main cast. Does frost damage, slowing the movement speed by 50%. Frost Nova, again, is here as well. 30-second cooldown. Freezes targets. Flurry, as I mentioned again, is a Flurry of Ice, striking the target 3 times for a total of X frost damage. Each hit reduces the target's movement speed, and again it does the Brain Freeze. Or sorry, the Winter's Chill with Brain Freeze. Counterspell, 20-second cooldown, you know what that is. Conjure Refreshments is still here. Cone of Cold is another ability here. So again, targets inside of that take damage and have movement slowed. So a nice little 12-second kind of little AoE. Cold Snap, which is the cooldown of all those main CC abilities, and your Ice Block as well. Blizzard, so again, Blizzard is a cast. It then does a bunch of ice down onto the ground. Again, it is reduced by haste, it should be noted. And again, each time Blizzard deal damage, the cooldown of Frozen Orb is reduced by half a second. So again, an AoE situation, that's very nice. Because again, you'll see, I'll do them back to back here. But you'll see that each little time that does damage, it goes. So again, it reduces the cooldown of this by a good chunk. Yeah, there you go. It basically almost cut it in half in a sense. So that's quite nice. Blink. It's Blink. Arcane Intellect, again, all mages have Arcane Intellect. It gives you 10% increased Intellect, and this again is a raid buff. Alright, so that's kind of your base toolkit here. Now let's talk about the talents. So 15 row, we have Bone Chilling. So whenever you attempt to chill a target, it doesn't have to actually chill. So anything that attempts to chill, which is basically all your abilities, gain you Bone Chilling, increasing your spell damage you deal by 0.5% for 8 seconds, stacking it 10 times. So again, you end up with a 5% buff all the time. Lonely Winter, so again, it replaces your Water Elemental, and now again, you can no longer summon that, but your Frostbolt, Ice Lance, Flurry, your main abilities, deal 20% increased damage. There's also Ice Nova, which I will show off here. So this causes a whirl of icy wind around the enemy, dealing a bunch of damage to the target, and frost damage to all other enemies within 8 yards, freezing them in place. So again, it looks like this. Boom. Again, does pretty good damage to that first target, and again, does damage to other targets around there as well. So again, for high AoE situations, Mythic Plus, that might be the go-to here. We'll have to wait and see. 30 row, you have Glacial Insulation. So Ice Barrier increases your armor by 200% when active, Ice Barrier. And Ice Block applies the barrier when you fade. So again, whenever Ice Barrier comes off, you'll immediately get a free shield, basically. Shimmer is your improved Blink. Again, it is 2 charges, 20-second recharge, can be used off the GCD, can be used while casting. Now, Ice Flows is the one that I like. So it makes your next mage spell with a cast time shorter than 10 seconds, which again, most of your spells are shorter than 10 seconds. Castable while moving. Unaffected by the GCD, and again, castable while casting. So what this basically means is, let's see if I can get this right. I can start casting. There we go. But anyway, right? I can use it while casting. So I can start casting, use it, there we go. I can finish the cast, which is quite nice, especially if you take Glacial Spike with a much longer cast time and you, again, trust me, do not want to interrupt. This is the majority of your damage if you take this talent. So yes, that is definitely going to be quite good. And you get 3 charges of it. So again, I really think that if you take this, your movement will not be an issue. Incanter's Flow, Mirror Image, Rune of Power is your 45 row. So Incanter's Flow, as I talked about in my last 2 videos on Mage, is basically a 12% damage increase. It starts at 4%, it stacks up in 4% intervals, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, stops at 20, 20, 16, 12, 8, 4. Goes up and down every 10 seconds. Mirror Images, again, drops 3 copies of you. They just will cast Frostbolt over and over and over again. Last 40 seconds, so they last for a pretty long time. 2-minute cooldown. And then Rune of Power places a Rune of Power on the ground for 10 seconds, which increases your spell damage by 40% while you stay within 8 seconds. Now, if it wasn't for the movement restriction, this might be okay in Frost, and I'll show you what I mean possibly in a rotation later. I do think Incanter's Flow might end up just being best because it's kind of a passive, and trust me, you want to increase your damage because of things like Glacial Spike. Again, it does maybe matter what you take in the 100 row, which of these would be best, but I think with Glacial Spike, which is what I would probably want to play, Incanter's Flow might end up being the best. We'll have to wait and see. 60 row, Frozen Touch, so your Frostbolt grants you Fingers of Frost and Rain Freeze 20% more often, so again, you get more of your procs more often. Chain Reaction, your Ice Lance against frozen targets increase the damage of your Ice Lances by 3% for 10 seconds, stacking it at 10 times. So again, this is a talent that, again, if you don't take Glacial Spike, and again, when you take Glacial Spike, your Ice Lance no longer launches the Icicles, so you're not using Ice Lance unless you get the proc for the most part. And so, if you don't take this and take Thermal Void or Ray of Frost, this might actually be very good because you'll be Ice Lancing far more frequently, and you can basically just stack that up, and so your Ice Lance can be doing a lot of damage. And again, Ice Lance also has the built-in cleave effect. So again, for like a 2-target cleave, this could also be very good as well. Ebon Bolt is a 4 to 5 second cooldown, 2-second cast, launches a bolt of ice at the enemy, dealing a bunch of frost damage, and then granting you brain freeze. So Frozen Touch and Ebon Bolt are interesting in that Frozen Touch gives you more brain freeze, but just randomly. Ebon Bolt does it more consistently. I personally find that Frozen Touch, I find, gives me enough that I don't need it every 45 seconds. I would rather it happen a bit more often than that, which again, this definitely does happen. I don't need a guarantee. So I did find that Frozen Touch, because it also gives you Fingers of Frost more often for your nice empowered Ice Lances, that it ended up, I think, outweighing Ebon Bolt a bit. Now, if Ebon Bolt's damage went up, if the cooldown went down, if it granted you Fingers of Frost as well, things like that maybe make it better. Some people might just like the lack of, or the reduction of RNG. If that's the case, great. Then take Ebon Bolt. 75 row, you have Frigid Winds. Again, all of your chilling effects reduce the target movement speed by an additional 50%. So you already have a lot of that to begin with. Ice Ward just gives you 2 charges of Frost Nova, and then Ring of Frost I showed off earlier. 90 row, so you have Freezing Rain. So Frozen Orb makes Blizzard instant cast and increases its damage done by 30% for 12 seconds. As you see, Frozen Orb and Blizzard already have some synergy, with Blizzard reducing the cooldown of Frozen Orb. So this is great for Mythic Plus, right? Mythic Plus, this is amazing. You're going to be able to Frozen Orb, get an instant Blizzard. You're going to do a bunch more damage. The Blizzard reduces the damage, or sorry, the cooldown on Frozen Orb. You do it all over again. Great. Splitting Ice, so your Ice Lands and Icicles now deal increased damage and hit second nearby target for 80% of the damage. So again, the cleave had to do with this that I was talking about earlier. And then also, your Ebon Bolt and Glacial Spike also hit a second nearby target for 80% of the damage. So again, this adds the cleave ability to things like Ice Lance, Ebon Bolt, Glacial Spike, which again can definitely be helpful in probably more raiding situations where you might have an ad every once in a while. Freezing Rain can be better for the consistent. You also have Comet Storm. Again, I'll show this off. So Comet Storm, there we go. Let me show that again when it comes off cooldown. But basically, it calls on a series of 7 icy comets on and around the target that deal up to frost damage to all enemies within it. So again, you can see that there. Now again, it has a bunch of little hits here, right? Bam. So again, 13 cooldown, more AoE ability. For single target, again, I do think Splitting Ice is going to be better for sure. Comet Storm or Freezing Rain, I'm not quite sure. My gut is telling me Freezing Rain, but it could be Comet Storm. It probably depends on the situation as well. 100 row, again, I'm just in love with Glacial Spike. I just think it's really cool, and you'll see why in a little bit when it's the rotation. Again, it conjures a massive spike of ice, immerses your current icicles into it, impales the target, dealing a bunch of damage, plus all the damage stored in your icicles. So again, your mastery will increase the damage of this, and freeze the target in place. That won't happen on raids, but you get the idea. It requires 5 icicles to cast, so you can only cast it when you have 5 icicles. And again, passively, your Ice Lance no longer launches the icicles. Basically, you get rid of icicles with this now. Ray of Frost, chill and icy beam at the enemy for 4 seconds, dealing a bunch of frost damage every 0.8 seconds, and slowing movement. Each time Ray of Frost deals damage, its damage and snare increase by 10%. Generates 2 charges of Fingers of Frost over its duration. So again, let me show that off here. So again, there's your 1 proc, and then there's your 2nd proc. And again, it does, as you can see, pretty good damage, right? It does about 2,000, and again, it scales up every time. So you did 2,000, then like 2,150, then 2,450, right? It scales up and up and up. So in the end, on that 1 cooldown, does pretty decent damage. Thermal Void is the other one here. Icy Veins duration increased by 10 seconds, so it goes from 20 seconds to 30 seconds. And then your Ice Lance against frozen targets extends your Icy Veins by an additional 1 second. So again, it already lasts for a while, so you're definitely going to get some Ice Lances in there. And again, basically any Ice Lance you can get in on a Brain Freeze Winter's Chill target is going to help increase that, which is quite nice. Now, like I said, I prefer Glacial Spike, so when the cooldown of Ray of Frost is up, I will switch back to that, and then I will show you the rotation. I'm going to change some talents around here a little bit as well. So again, I'm going to switch over to Bone Chilling, and I'm going to switch to Glacial Spike. I will keep everything else the same. I'll also eventually show with Rune of Power as well, because I think Rune of Power might work out, but I just find it to be a bit clunky. Again, and I don't like lack of movement as well, which in actual non-dummy combat will matter. Okay, so let's switch this up. And again, I'm going to Bone Chilling because I want the extra damage on my abilities, specifically Glacial Spike. Lonely Winter does not buff Glacial Spike. If it did, that would be amazing, even if it's at a lower percent. If you don't take Glacial Spike, Lonely Winter will probably win out, by the way, I think, single target, if you take Ray of Frost or Thermal Void. Because again, the majority of your damage, if you don't take Glacial Spike, is going to be from those abilities. So that can be very helpful. So Bone Chilling, however, will also increase the damage of Glacial Spike, which is the main point of this, as you'll see. So let me, first off, summon my little dude. Alright, so now I got my dude back, and let's go. So again, the idea about this is you're going to be... Alright, so there's my flurry. Now I'm going to wait till I have 5 stacks before I actually use it. I'm going to Glacial Spike, and then I'm going to use that right afterwards. And what ends up happening is, what you'll see is that the Glacial Spike basically gets the ability of it being frozen. So let me get Glacial Spike again. Now, you'll basically Glacial Spike every 5, but if you get the Brain Freeze proc, you definitely want to keep it for a Glacial Spike if you're taking that talent. So again, I'm going to wait until I have 5, get a Glacial Spike, Finish Frost, I can get an Ice Lance in there as well, and all of those do damage like it was. You can kind of see here, I had almost a 20k crit on that. So again, Glacial Spike. Now again, you're not going to just simply waste, you're not going to keep that, you'll use it whenever you get 5, but the idea here is that if you get the proc on the Flurry, you will always save it for a Glacial Spike. And again, because the target is frozen, you can get one extra Ice Lance, it looks like, in there as well. And again, I should have Ice Lance as well there, but you get the idea. So that is the basic idea with this playstyle. Alright, so if you look at my damage from this, and again, I was not by any means playing perfect. I should have been casting Frozen Orb as well off cooldown, but the point I want to highlight here is that Glacial Spike becomes your biggest hitting ability. I actually got unlucky with my crits as well. I had been normally getting more crits than non-crits, because again, it basically counts as a frozen target when you have the proc. So the more procs you can get, the better. But again, still, almost 50% crit, and when they did crit, they crit for around 20k. So that is quite nice. Now again, Rune of Power might be something that could be worthwhile. And again, I will show you that now. Because the idea would be whenever you get the Flurry proc, that's when you would Rune of Power. Because you'd want that Rune of Power for the Glacial Spike. So let me kind of see if I can get that going. I'll wait actually for Icy Veins to come off. But I really like this gameplay. I like the idea that you're kind of... I mean, when Blizzard designed the game, they simply designed it so that the damage took place when the spell hit when you have collision, right? Collision detection. And so that's just something that has been in the game forever, and they kind of like exploited it with this spec. And again, I know it's been like this in Legion, and even before that, but I really find it very engaging. I like this idea of you cast an ability, you then cast another ability, and because it takes time for that ability to get to the target, you get the buff on that ability, which is kind of really, really cool in my mind. Alright, so let's see if I can't get this going again. Alright, here we go. So I'm going to now Rune of Power, Glacial Spike, Flurry, Ice Lance. Not bad, a 23k crit. Again, Rune of Power, Glacial Spike. I should be Ice Lancing after that as well, but you get the point. So yeah, so it basically does center the damage around your Rune of Power window. But as you can see, you're going to have pretty decent procs going on, and my damage right now is ridiculous. But again, that's a very short period of time, so we'll end combat now. But yeah, so Rune of Power might be useful. Again, if there's fights where movement is not as big of an issue, or again, you can kind of plan out your movement a little bit better, that can be nice. Now, it should be noted that if you have to do slight movement, Rune of Power can still be okay as long as you stay within 8 yards because of Ice Flows. So again, with Ice Flows, you could start casting your Glacial Spike, Ice Flows in the middle of it, then move. As long as you don't leave the 8 yards, you will basically keep the Rune of Power buff. But as you can see, if I kind of scroll back up in my damage meter here, where was the one that was the good one here? There it is, right? So again, I had a 23k crit, and it should be noted, I have 26,000 health at 110. So again, this would do more damage at 120, and again, if it scales in the same way we're seeing now, that's strong. And again, it does very good damage, and that's basically going to be my summary for Frost, is that I think it's a very well-rounded spec. It has the ability to do great burst damage, the ability to do great sustained single target, even without Glacial Spike, with Ray of Frost or Thermal Void, and other talents like Lonely Winter, and again, you can switch some other things around as well. It does really good sustained single target damage. It has pretty good movement if you take Ice Flows, and it has really good utility. Again, you have all the utility that mages are used to, right, with your Ice Barrier and your Visibility and your Ice Block, but it also gives Arcane Intellect, so again, it's giving a raid buff. You have Frost Nova to be able to CC things in Mythic Plus. You have Kona Code for good AoE and slow. You have Blizzard and Frozen Orb for again good AoE damage. Here you can of course talent into things like Freezing Rain, Comet Storm, Splitting Ice to help increase that AoE damage. You can take Ice Nova if you want to help increase that AoE damage. You can take Ring of Frost, right? I mean, like, the amount of utility that Frost is going to be bringing. Again, you have Spell Steal, you have Remove Curse, you bring Heroism, you get the point. Mage just brings everything, right? Like, the utility of Mage is great. It's definitely a class that, again, I'm a officer in my guild, and I guarantee when it comes time to recruit, I'm going to be trying to recruit some mages, because Mage utility is great, and again, they have some really good specs. Both Arcane and Frost are doing great single target damage. Fire has great AoE damage, so again, Mage is definitely a spec that I think you're going to want to have in your guild. And you're going to want to play if you're somebody who enjoys range DPS and range spellcasting. So let's talk a bit about stats. So crit is okay. The issue is that because of Shatter, right, crit is going to, I think, eventually have some kind of like scaling diminishing returns because of that. So again, going back, again, Shatter multiplies the critical strike chance of your spells against frozen target by 1.5 and has an additional 50% critical strike chance. So again, basically, it just guarantees crit, and your crits are going to be doing more damage, which is quite nice. Haste, again, it's going to have some value. Again, there are some spells, again, like Blizzard, that are reduced by haste. Again, haste does help with movement, helps with things like your cast time. It might be possible with enough haste. I don't think it's going to be honestly possible with the way that secondaries are going to scale, but it might be possible that you can get in like a second Icelands in that Winter's Chill window. I don't know. Probably not. We'll have to see. Verse was very good for Frost and Legion. It probably will still be very good. Again, anytime you can just increase your damage because of the crit multiplier, versatility, just increasing that base damage by a bunch, can really be useful. And again, it really is going to come down to how well this scales. Mastery. Again, I think Mastery is going to be important as well. Again, not only does it going to contribute to your icicle damage, which is important. If you take Glacial Spike, it includes that damage there as well, so giving even more burst. And again, increasing the damage of Frozen Orb is also going to be useful. Like I said, I wasn't using Frozen Orb like I should have been in the rotation, but again, you normally would. This is definitely something you would still be using in rotation every minute off cooldown, even single target. So again, all their stats have interesting synergy. It'd be interesting to see what ends up being best. This will, of course, come down to scaling, but it's exciting. So what do you think about Frost? Is it your favorite mage spec like it is for me? If not, what is your favorite mage spec? Do you like Fire more? Do you like Arcane? What are you looking forward to? Do you think that Frost is going to have too much? It's going to be basically like the rogues of the past, where basically everyone just stacks mages because they bring so much? Let me know. Leave it down in the comments. We can start a conversation, kind of see how we think. If you like this video, give me a like. If you just like the video, give me a dislike. If you want to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. I'm going to have a mage summary video with likes and dislikes coming out after this video, and then Death Knights are coming out after that. So again, I'm going to be doing Unholy and Frost Death Knight, and then Blood. My first tank video will be coming out on that. So again, if you're looking forward to any of those classes, go ahead and subscribe. I will eventually be doing every single class on the beta. So look forward to that. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in those future videos.